Okay, we're going to begin our service. We're going to begin our service. We're beginning it with the military honors. In a moment, I'm going to ask you all to rise. If you are currently serving in the military, you may perform the hand salute. If you have been honorably discharged from the military, you may perform the hand salute. I'm going to ask you at this time to rise.
States Army and a grateful nation. Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation of your most honorable and faithful service.
So this morning we recognize This morning we recognize that this is a time in which there is a tear in the fabric of life. And a tear in the fabric of the heart. And so it's our fondest hope and prayer that through these goodness, of happiness, of joy, celebration, of smiles, that a full and a family and a full fabric of life will be rewoven for each and every one of us. And so if you could repeat after me this blessing, Baruch, Atah, Adonai, Dayan, Ha'emet. Blessed are you, Lord our God, the judge of truth. Amen. Just one. Wouldn't be appropriate to begin this service without a water bottle and a Kleenex. For everything there is a season. A time for every experience under heaven. There is a time to be born and a time to die. There is a time to plant and a time to uproot what has been planted. There is a time to tear down and there is a time to build up. There is a time to weep and there is a time to laugh. There is a time to grieve and there is a time to dance. There is a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. There is a time to embrace and there is a time to refrain from embracing. There is a time to seek and there is a time to lose. There is a time to keep and there is a time to discard. There is a time to tear and there is a time to sow. There is a time to keep silence and there is a time to speak. There is a time to forget and there's a time to remember. For everything there is a season. There have been so many, many seasons of laughter, of joy and of celebration, of togetherness, of meals shared, of cutting the turkey at Thanksgiving, to memorable Passover Seder experiences, to playing shark in the pool with the grandchildren, of Saturday visits to the Metropolitan with Lisa and Mendy, on one-on-one breakfasts in St. Pete, and the sharing of great wisdom when moments were tough, to recent Saturday family Zoom calls, to so many, many occasions that touched each and every one of us deeply. This is now the day, and this is the season, to remember with love each and every one of those moments, and so many, many more. This is the day for us to remember that which is eternal, that is without end, that is everlasting, of how Harv will always continue to be with each of us, guiding us and inspiring us, uplifting us, teaching us, and yes, speaking to us. This is the day that we draw close to each of our hearts, his essence, his neshama, his soul and spirit, which has played such an important role in each of our lives over the years. He is with us here. He will always be with us. As a source of strength and of abundant blessing. There is a long-standing Jewish custom and teaching that speaks of reciting 100 blessings each and every day, that we should continually, even amidst our times of loss and of sorrow, we should continually be in a place of praise and acknowledgement of all of our daily blessings. Of those 100 blessings, the tradition goes on to say that the most important of all, a timeless blessing, is that of gratitude. So how appropriate it is that we should begin this service of sacred and personal memory with a shared sense of profound gratitude for Harv's life and the meaning that he brought to each of us in a way that touched us so deeply. May the Holy One of Blessing, from whom all things come and to all things return, on this day of remembrance give us light and give us peace. And may all the words that we speak and all the memories we share be a source of meaning and of strength. Amen. There's a long-standing Jewish custom and tradition, in times of personal loss, to turn to the book of Psalms in the Bible. And throughout history, those who came before us would literally open the Bible, they would turn to this book, they'd begin to read, and they would feel strengthened and comforted. And so I found one particular psalm that I thought would be particularly meaningful to share, because in so many ways it describes the essence of Harv's life and his spirit. Blessed is the one who reveres God, who greatly delights in God's commandments. His descendants will be honored in the land, and the generation of the upright will be blessed. His household prospers, his righteousness endures forever. For light dawns in the darkness for the upright, for the one who is gracious and compassionate and just. For he is not afraid of evil tidings. His mind is firm, trusting in God. His heart is steady. He will not be afraid. He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. And his righteousness endures forever. His life is exalted in honor. When the great Israel, the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the good name, when he saw misfortune threatening his community, it was his custom to go into a certain part of the forest to meditate. And there he would light a fire and he'd say a special prayer, and the miracle would be accomplished and the misfortune averted. But later, when his students also experienced the moment when misfortune was threatening their community, they too would go to that very same place in the forest and they would say, Master of the universe, listen. I no longer know how to light the fire, but I'm still able to say the prayer. And again, the miracle would be accomplished. And still later, the next generation of students, in order to save their community once more, they too would go into the forest and they'd say, I don't know how to light the fire. I no longer know the prayer, but I know the place, and this must be sufficient. And it was sufficient, and the miracle was accomplished. And then it fell to the next generation to overcome misfortune. And they would say, we are unable to light the fire, we don't know the prayer, we cannot even find the place in the forest. But all that we can do is tell the story. And this must be sufficient. And it was sufficient. For God made human beings because God loves stories. God loves stories, and Harv loved to tell stories. Many of them will be shared by his grandchildren during the course of this service. Yet one of his favorites was about joining the army and his many, many experiences overseas. For Dina had the great fortune to interview Harv in 2008 for a school paper and to document in great detail many of his war memories. And she notes in the paper, Harvey was certainly not the type of person that enjoyed a dangerous situation. I'm a lover, not a fighter, he would say, about his decision to join the army. And as a child, he would not want to pick fights. For on the contrary, he was smart enough to know that you cannot let yourself be eaten up. For the options would be to go over there to fight Hitler or for Hitler to come to the United States. So Harv knew this was a fight he was ready for. So he joined the ROTC at the University of Cincinnati in the artillery battalion. And at his first training base, he was already confronted by numerous anti-Semitic stereotypes, including questions about what happened to his horns. Harv often thought about home during the army days, and especially missed the Jewish holidays. His bravery, his courage, his strength, along with the numerous guardian angels of which he spoke often. Those guardian angels enabled him to return home safely and to begin work in the sales department of the Crown Overalls Company. Numerous other stories were shared over the years, from growing up in a very poor family and without the assistance of the Jewish Welfare Agency, not knowing whether or not the rent could get paid or having food on the table. With a smile, he often told the story of receiving his first pair of pants, but later having them burn up in a fire caused by, yes, the Shiva candle. which led Harv to not being a big fan of lighting Shiva candles. God loves stories, and Harv loved stories. May they always continue to be told, honoring his legacy and his remarkable life journey. To continue that theme of storytelling and the profound impact he had upon each and every member of this wonderful family, I'd like to invite his first grandson, invite Adam, to share these words.
One correction there, Steve-O. First, only, and favorite grandson. Thank you for doing this service and for all the heart and effort you've put into it. I think Harv would be especially pleased with the great deal he got on your rate. Anyway, my Grandpa Harv, or my Gramps as I would call him, was an excellent writer, but he had a perfectionist streak with certain things, and I think that prevented him from writing nearly as often as he'd like sometimes. He worked as a printer most of his life, but he was a writer at heart, and he always enjoyed my writing when I shared it with him, so it was really important to me to write something in his honor, and I really struggled with it and actually had writer's block. But fittingly, since he was a night owl into his 90s, my writer's block cleared at about 11:30 at night a couple nights ago, and I crafted this well into the midnight hour, and I'm going to try really hard to get through it. My Grandpa Harv was the greatest man I've ever known. They say that youth is wasted on the young. Well, I've come to learn that in many ways, grandparents are wasted on the young. As a kid, I certainly loved and appreciated my Grandpa Harv. I loved roughhousing with him on the floor of the dining room on Forest Oak Court, much to Grandma Jane's consternation. I loved pretending with him that he could see me on his video phone, which was always in the shop. The best part, of course, was that he knew that I knew he didn't have a video phone, and he'd still try to guess what I was wearing anyway. I remember going with him to Reds games at Old Riverfront Stadium, maybe the worst ballpark I've ever been to, but it was always special because I was there with him. And of course, he always had great advice. Always try your hardest, learn to defend yourself, don't be a jerk to your sister. Admittedly, I was not always the best at following his advice at that age. Looking back now, I can see clearly that during my teenage years, he would put a lot of effort in taking me aside and trying to teach me. Those years were tough for me. I was an overweight, insecure young man who often overcompensated for that by being obnoxious and a loudmouth. But Gramps always believed in my potential, and I know he saw me struggling. He would try to build my confidence while also trying to temper my outspokenness. I remember some of those talks being uncomfortable sometimes, because he wasn't afraid to use tough love and be honest about my shortcomings. It would always come from a place of love, but he would challenge me to be a better person, the kind of person he knew I was, but that I wasn't really capable of being at the time. I think in many ways he knew me then far better than I knew myself. Thankfully, I had the luxury of time with him, time for me to mature, and time for me to better appreciate him. I grew into my 20s, I became more self-assured, and I found an incredible life partner in Catherine, whom he absolutely adored. Gramps would still try to teach me, but now he could just help point me in the right direction because he knew that I was capable of getting there. We became buddies, Gramps and Ace, talking sports, politics, cars, and computers, and trading stories about what was going on in our lives. In my 30s, he even ditched his Cincinnati roots to root for the Browns. I'm sure in no small part because it finally aligned our sports fandom after all those years. The day after we'd have a nice chat on the phone, I'd almost always hear from my mom, "Harv, loved your call yesterday. I'll miss hearing those reports, and I'll miss the calls even more." So he was a truly awesome grandpa. But having been lucky enough to have him in my life for so long, I was granted the tremendous privilege of coming to understand how Harvey Zwerin was an even better man. He had a basically unbreakable positive attitude that could carry him through almost any adversity. And he faced real adversity his whole life. His mental toughness and fighting spirit were extraordinary. He volunteered for combat 2 times after he was initially turned away to protect the Jewish people and our country. As crazy as it sounds, considering he was almost 98, it really did not sink into me that we could lose him until these last few weeks. He said for years that he planned to make it to 105, and I took him 100% at his word. After all, he was that tough. He had a resolute moral compass, was classy as can be, and wanted to make sure things were done the right way. He had an incredible way of relating to people. He had respect for everyone and a genuine interest in anyone who came into contact with for any length of time. He would chat with everyone and would be completely charming and interesting. And if he loved you, he'd literally do just about anything for you. He knew when to be serious, but he also loved to have fun. His smile could light up a room, and his laugh was truly contagious. There weren't many things better than sitting around a table and cracking up with Harvo. He was a hilarious storyteller, and he had too many to count. And he could cut up a dance floor well into his 80s to everyone's delight. He was the best role model anyone could ask for. And he said innocent. He set an especially meaningful example for me in being an awesome dad to two daughters. He wasn't a saint, and we all know he wasn't perfect, which he would be the first to admit. But after getting to be a part of his life for 40 years, I think I could say he was pretty darn close. If I end up being half the guy he was, I'll have done pretty well. About a year ago, I asked him what got through the toughest times in his life. And he said, love. I always thought about the people that loved me and that gave me the strength I needed. I am indescribably lucky to be Harvey Zwerin's grandson, to be a person that he loved, and to be one of those people that got to love him. Love you always, Grams. Love, Ace.
Thank you very much, Adam. There are so many different themes, so many core values that truly define the essence of Harv's life. Certainly, of which we've spoken and will continue to speak. One of the most prominent was his resiliency in making the best out of every situation that ever came into his life. Certainly his positive attitude, his outlook, never complaining, despite numerous health challenges and adversities, but managing to see the silver lining in every challenge that he would face. His time in the Army in his early 20s was only the beginning of those numerous life challenges, leading to losing his ability to speak due to spasmodic dystonia in 1970, open heart surgery, and most recently a bout with cancer. What was certainly remarkable was at the age of 96 and 97, making his way through the COVID pandemic and finding remarkable ways to stay connected and to thrive. He was in so many ways, as Adam has noted, he was the ultimate teacher to each of us, sharing life lessons that are so present in each and every member of his family. He was, yes, that ultimate fighter, never lost hope, always showing a smile and managing to laugh and enjoy life. It is hard to speak of Harvey Zwerin without speaking of family. When I was voted into the Zwerin family 43 years ago, and yes, I have understood from many parties that there was a family vote, which I am told was very, very close. When I was voted into the family 43 years ago, when I married Mendy, I immediately became aware that I was entering a very tight-knit clan that valued family above anything else. This actually began with Harv's parents and has been passed in so many ways, been passed on l'ador vador from generation to generation. Don't you dare miss a family gathering, God forbid. From Newport to Cincinnati and on to Cleveland, family was and still remains at the core. To continue the telling of stories and the legacy of family, Danny, I'd like to invite you to share these words.
So I decided to wear pink today because it was pretty much one of the most vibrant colors I have. And whenever I think of Harv, I think of vibrant, so I wanted to honor that. As always, I'm not sure how I'm going to follow up my brother, but I'll do my best. My grandpa, Harvey Zwerin, who I lovingly called Harvo, was the most amazing, incredible man. If you knew my grandpa, you loved him. The last time I saw my grandpa was the day before he passed away. I was asking him questions about his childhood memories and memories of his grandchildren. He proceeded to tell me I was a tough little son of a gun, and when asked if I was the most difficult grandchild of the four, he lovingly responded, yeah. And believe me, I know I was difficult, but he never gave up on me. He had the patience of a saint. He continued to offer me guidance and advice and love because he knew how capable I was. Growing up, my bedroom used to be a disaster zone. Grandma Jane was too scared to even try to help me clean my room for her fear of hurting herself. But not Harvo. As a man who had faced far worse than a messy bedroom, he graciously helped me tidy up. In my adult years, he would jokingly tell me how I pretty much manipulated him into doing the cleaning, and I'd watch. Sounds about right. At any rate, a phrase my grandpa used a lot. On Tuesday, during our time together, I casually told him how much he taught me over the years in response to him thanking me for showing me how to mute the TV. The stories continued, but later in the conversation, he circled back and asked me what all he had taught me. I proceeded to tell him all the life lessons and values that he instilled in me. So I will share just some of these today. Harvo taught me the importance of education and learning. He always wanted to learn, whether that be formally through taking classes or simply having me show him how to do something on his phone or iPad. He also really loved when his great-granddaughter Jane showed him how to use his phone. He was truly the definition of a lifelong learner. When it came time to buy my first car, I knew I needed Harvo by my side, as he was quite the negotiator. He told me, if you don't like the numbers, don't be afraid to stand up and walk out. I told my mom the same thing. The first time, he helped lead me through that negotiating process. Since then, I've negotiated 4 more cars, and after each one, I would proudly call Harvo to rejoice together in how good of a deal I got for myself. Though Harvo faced many obstacles in his life, he always managed to stay positive. He has taught me to persevere through the toughest of times and find the good in everything. He has inspired me to live life to the fullest. Lastly, the treasure of family. Harv loved spending time with his family and taught me no matter what to always make time for each other. Team Zwerin is the most beautiful thing he created. We are his legacy that will live on for years, that will pass on his lessons from generation to generation, Lador Vador. I am so very blessed that I had him in my life for 36 years. He watched me grow from that difficult grandchild into a woman I know he is so very proud of. So through one of the toughest times in my life, losing him, I will honor him by persevering, cherishing our memories together, celebrating his life, and living his legacy through all that he has taught me. I love you, Harvo, always.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you. It is truly quite amazing how Harv managed to reinvent himself well into his 80s and his 90s, when many wished to just slow down and take it easy. Danny, as you noted in such a wonderful way, Harv wanted to continue to learn and to grow. He took classes, he checked out books. He never wanted others to do for him, but he always preferred to learn how to do it on his own. From programs on the computer such as Excel, to using his iPad, learning about Zoom, and FaceTime. And Jane, you were a very, very special teacher with a lot of patience as well. And no doubt it was a challenge at times, particularly due to his failing eyesight and his hearing. But his desire to learn and grow was unending. In more recent years, Harvey became a CNN junkie, always up to date on world news, sharing some very pointed opinions about our former president. And many times he would need to turn down the TV. We would have to turn down the TV so we could just have a conversation on the phone. The community at Myers was a very important part of Harv's new life after moving from Cincinnati. From all of his wonderful dinner table mates to his participation in the men's club and attending classes, in so many ways he became the mayor of Myers and well known to so many. In recent years, his passion became the library, and he wanted to make sure that not only books in print, but also books on tape were available for all of the residents. And to continue that spirit of the telling of stories and of all of his many life lessons. Lonnie, please.
There's tissues in case I need more than one. So when I was just a little girl, my parents were in the hospital preparing for my sister Dina's arrival. I was not quite 2 years old at the time when my papa, as I like to call him, bought me my first bicycle. There was a little boy who lived down the street, and he paid him to give up his bike just so I would have something to ride. He would always laugh at the story as I bossed him around the entire neighborhood, yelling, "Faster, Grandpa, faster," as he pushed me in my new bike. I was very bossy. He told me this story in one of our last FaceTime conversations. It's a story that brought him so much joy and laughter, and I will certainly smile every time I tell it. Throughout my childhood, I really did grow to cherish our relationship. From the many times I stayed at his house in Cincinnati, having breakfast together in the morning, to writing stories on his ancient computer, which I found yesterday. Thank you for saving them. Many unforgettable trips to Florida, like the time I got lice on the airplane. My dad lost his suitcase and had to wear Harvo's underwear for several days. No matter the stage of life, we always kept in close contact. We exchanged many emails while I was living abroad, moving to a new city, starting a new job. Gosh, we were exchanging emails when he was 95. I will miss him signing his emails Don Harvo, Harv Z, Harvo, Papa, etc., and always starting his email with "Dear Lonnie Legs" or "Dear Lonnikins." Looking back, I really believe, truly, that every conversation I had with him was a gift. I always walked away from our talks with gratitude and insight into his life and into the meaning of life. One of my favorite times of year to talk to him was around New Year's. I have memories of calling him, whether I was on my way to a party on the streets of New York or sitting at home as a young mom. We chatted on New Year's about the year ahead and what I was looking forward to. We spent many hours talking about my work, the challenges and beauties of marriage, of motherhood, and of so much more. And just recently, I had transitions professionally, and Harvo was my biggest advisor and cheerleader. At the age of 97, I was calling him for advice. He gave me such insight into the opportunities that are out there for me, and always wanted to make sure I was looking out for myself. And I will always be thankful for our special bond, the relationship he had with my husband, Jonathan, and my kids. And I'll always remember when my kids would visit him here in Cleveland, especially this last time, my kids asking, "Where's Harvo?" Every time they walked in the room and he wasn't there, they would always look for him. They obviously loved him too, Jake and Ben. Harvo, I will miss talking to you and laughing, but I know you will continue to look out for me, and I love you and will miss you always.
So Dina Berkman, we miss you. We're thinking about you. And I know we want to make it possible for you to share your personal reflections and your words with us. So, Lonnie, you're going to bring that over? Okay, thank you.
As you've heard through today's service, Harv was a storyteller. Whenever we spoke to him over the phone or in person, he somehow was able to share a personal life story. As my dad mentioned, I had the privilege of interviewing him for an assignment in college, and as part of that historical sketch assignment, I asked Harvo to go into more detail about some of his Army stories that he has shared with all of us throughout the years. His story about the Army truck crash in Italy, where miraculously he flipped out of the vehicle and landed on his feet. The story on how he got caught in the current of the Danube River, and how he asked for milk from a dairy farmer because his stomach was upset, with a hand grenade in his hand. Those were some of my favorite stories. The theme I took away from those stories is that Harvo was the strongest and most resilient man I know. Today, you've heard about some of the hardships throughout his life and how he was able to overcome those life-altering obstacles. He leaves behind a legacy of someone who really could handle anything. Not only was he the strongest person I know mentally, but also physically. I think he was the only person I have ever known that had rock-hard abs well into his 80s and even early 90s. He did that because he really prioritized exercise and his health. And that obviously made an impact, which allowed him to live as long as he did. The other takeaway I had from the stories he shared about the Army, and my dad mentioned this earlier, is that in each story he shared, he talked about how he had a guardian angel protecting him. He used to call upon his guardian angel during these difficult times and to get him out of a bad situation. I'm not sure who his guardian angel was, but I know that he will always be my guardian angel. Even in the few days following his passing, and especially just given the circumstances that I am not there in person today, I've already been calling to him for guidance and support. He served as that person for many people in our family and throughout his life. I know he can continue to share wisdom with us, even though he is no longer here. Although we miss him so much already, we know that just like his guardian angel, that Harvo is only a call away.
Dina, thank you. We are giving you a virtual hug from a distance here. We are very much thinking of you. So above all, Harv loved being a dad. He loved being a grandparent and a great-grandparent. Lisa and Mendy, you were so very, very, very blessed. I don't know many daughters that are comfortable calling their dad by their first name. He was your ultimate life teacher and your cheerleader. You carry into your life so many remarkable life memories that will continue to bless you. I'm so grateful that 43 years ago, I married into your wonderful family. Harv and I shared many laughs, and he always wanted to know what's happening in the life of the rabbi. And Lisa and Mendy, this morning we pause to count the many, many blessings of being the daughter of Harvey Zwerin. And how Harv loved being a grandparent. To Adam and to Kat, to Danny, to Lonnie, and to Jonathan, to Dina, and to Sam. How much Harv loved each of you. Each of you uplifted his life, and you brought him so much joy and pleasure. He was so very proud of each of you and your life accomplishments, always interested the latest in your lives. And we pause this morning to count the abundant blessings as well of being one of Harv's loved and adored grandchildren. And wow, to be a great-grandchild of Harvey Zwerin. To Jane and to Ellie, to Jake, and to Ben, and to Noah, and to Asher. What a joy each of you was to Harvo. Sitting on your grandfather's lap, giving him a kiss or a hug. He always wanted to know about each of you. From generation to generation to generation to generation of 4 generations of family. We are grateful this morning for the gift of love in a family that has been passed on to all of us. To Harv's wonderful and dear sister, to Sonia, and to Harv's late brother, Bobby, who I believe is welcoming him with open arms in the heavens above. And Bobby, whose memory blesses this moment as well for all of us, please know that all of our thoughts and prayers are with you and all of Harv's wonderful extended family and those that are participating virtually in this service from their various life locations, all of those that he touched over the years. May you find comfort and peace in all the many life moments that you were blessed to share together. And we pause this morning as well to remember with love the presence of Jane Zwerin, and the 56 years of life that they had the good fortune to share together. And together they raised a wonderful family filled with love, filled with happiness, and filled with joy. To everything, there is a season. There is a time for every experience under heaven. We pause with much love to remember, to acknowledge, to honor, and yes, to celebrate a remarkable man and a teacher to all of us, Harvey Zwerin. May his good name always be remembered for much goodness and for blessing. And we say, Amen. We're now going to turn to the concluding prayer of our time here, of the El Malei Rachamim, of God of mercy and God of compassion. And I'd like to ask in honor of these sacred words that we'll speak, and certainly in honor of Harv's memory, that we all stand together. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utohorim, Kezohar Rakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Hillel Chaim, Ben Meir V'Gittel, Shehalach La'olamo, Ba'al Harachamim, Yasterehu Beseder Kenafav La'olamim, V'tzor B'tzor Chayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo V'Nomar. Amen. El Malei Rachamim, compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to the soul and spirit of Hillel Chaim, Ben Meir V'Gittel, to Harvey Zwerin, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in a bond of eternal and everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he now rest b'shalom, in peace. And we say, Amen.
Okay, well,